She's probably going to help entertain, I think.
She was to a certain level.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you, allowing for me to share today a little bit about fingerprint history. I provided each one of you a small little packet to go over as we discuss this fingerprint wonder world. Prior to the 1800s, fingerprints were a form of a signature used by the wealthy, to whereas they didn't know how to read and write, so they had their servants do it for them. And on special documents, and whether it was a property that they sold or a person that they sold, they would actually use their thumb impression or their finger impressions as a signature on documents stating that it was theirs. During the 1800s, the discoveries and classifications that were developed by such men as John Evangelist Perkinge, with his theory on pattern types, Dr. Henry Faulds, he has wonderful ideas of using printer's ink for rolling prints. Sir Francis Galton, grouping arches, loops, and whorls, as you see on the first page of your documents there. Each one of those represents a different type and different characteristics of fingerprints, which we have arches, loops, and whorls, and there are, of course, different subcategories to each. John Vucic, solving the Rojos murders by comparing a bloody print found at the scene by the killer, this day in history, June 19th, 1892. The murders actually occurred in a home. The lady ran from the home to tell the police officers that someone had killed her 2 small children, that she was not on the premises when this murder occurred. Vucic went back to the scene of the crime. He was actually able to find a print from the killer on the doorknob in blood. They compared this print from the doorknob to Mrs. Rojas' fingerprints and found out that she was, in fact, the killer. She had murdered her own small 2 children so she would look good in the eyes of her boyfriend, so she could actually get married. The formative phase of the 1900s contributed much more to the fingerprinting system most of you are familiar with today. Most of you know Sherlock Holmes or Agatha Christie. Both are all who like to solve crimes using the clues that are left behind. But the main development system that we use today is Sir Edward Henry. Sir Edward Henry was given credit for giving life to fingerprinting here as we know it in the United States. Although he's from Great Britain, he actually gained this information from 2 fine gentlemen that were not British, they were not American, they were actually Indian. Haki and Bose, they are the ones that created the ideas of how to find the delta, the core, the divergence, the type lines, and the pattern area that we use today. Since when Henry took this discovery to the courts, those 2 gentlemen were not given any kind of credit for the discovery of fingerprints until many years later, due to the fact that they were not of a Caucasian race and they were not permitted to do such. But I'm one that's very grateful, and so are all the victims out there that have been. I having trouble. I'm sorry with this. It's a lot.
Because of her?
Yeah. It's.
Do you want me to sit out and you guys just do it?
No, we're good.
Babies.
I can't help it. She's gonna have to be it. Bertillon's facial and body measurement system has changed greatly over time. It was challenged a lot by a lot of the courts because of the fact that Bertillon's idea was that no 2 ears were alike. Well, having a database of ears just didn't seem to set well with many others. So it was challenged a lot in the court system because there was too many similarities between body measurements for types of people that were being held accountable for crimes and murders. Too many people were 6 feet tall. Too many people had, a size 9.5 shoe. What have you. So that is one of the reasons why we actually go by the Henry setup system instead. The 1924 Congress and the FBI jumped on board establishing the latent print section, which actually intel with the chiefs of police and the FBI are able to work together, they combined the prints that they had, and at that time there was about 1 million prints, which is a lot of information for the early 1900s. Further developments were made in the process of recovering and preserving the prints. Most familiar of that we all use is powders. The powders come in different types, and as you can see on page 3 of your little handout, there's different kinds of types of powders and other preservatives that we use. We have magnetic powders, metallic powders, and colorful powders. And there's the chemicals that we can even use to retrieve prints through wet surfaces like paint or water. That chemical is called a small particle reagent. Sometimes using what you have can work too. As I brought with me today, a compact and a brush. If you have a latent print, most latent prints is a print that you can't really see, but you know it's there. Most objects that we touch, whether it be the doorknob, a table, your cell phone, you can actually use something as simple as a compact and a brush to pull up a latent print. And of course, you'd have to have tape to remove it. All right. This brings us to the more recent years. Many of us, have heard of the of APHIS by watching TV shows like CSI or NCIS that they use a service called APHIS. It's actually called iAPHIS, which it stands for the Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System. Since this was began in the early 1920s, over 59 million criminal history records have been logged in APHIS. APHIS doesn't only log fingerprints, they also log facial recognition, identification marks, such as scars, tattoos, and other marks. The TV shows make it appear that if the APHIS is quite easy to access and you just put in a few numbers and things come back to you quite quickly. Unfortunately, that's not really the case. The case is it can take weeks to months to actually identify a suspect or a victim. And that is the best things I think about APHIS. This leads us to the promising future of biometrics. The science behind fingerprinting has expanded to palm printing, hand geometry, dynamic signature, vascular pattern. That means that from a heat signature, they can actually identify your blood vessels from a heat signature. Iris or eye scanners like we've seen in television shows in the past where they scan your eyeball, that really exists because those patterns are similar to fingerprint patterns. No two are alike. Fortunately for us, the presidential directives for national and homeland security have been set into place as of June 2008 by President Bush. And as long as the registry of the biometric data collection, storage, and exchange standards are followed, we will continue to make a difference. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope you all learned a little bit about fingerprints today. And I forgot to pan everybody in earlier. And I can't do that. And everybody's here.